it's actually comforting to feel like I can't do it. But I think it's just like a momentary discomfort, because then on the other side of that discomfort is, okay, this is actually pretty awesome. This is actually really good. I was afraid to do it. The only constraint was my fear.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted income outside the traditional means, especially during this coronavirus time, then do we have the Money Tree Show for you. Today I'll be talking with Chris Guillebeau, the New York Times bestselling author of The $100 Startup, Side Hustle, The Happiness of Pursuit, and other books, and the author of a brilliant new fable, perfect to inspire you now, The Money Tree. And that's just what I want to talk with him about how to make money grow from trees or find residual income or a completely new revenue stream during these exceptionally interesting times. That plus we'll talk about Metal Gear Solid 3, Thankful Bistros, China and Titan, Masala Dosas, Earplug Champion, Rattlesnake Records, The Office meets the Game of Thrones, and what in the world, oh God, selling condoms and the grandparents test has to do with anything.
That's amazing. Well done, by the way.
Woohoo! Thank you, and so welcome to the show, Chris. Are you ready to shine?
Michael, it's such a huge honor. I'm glad to be here. I am ready to shine. And thank you for actually reading the book. That's incredible.
You are most welcome and a mighty woohoo! So, before we dive right into things, and we're going to go to the heart of things today, people are struggling and it's going to get more interesting. Is now the best time to look for money from the side?
I think it's always a good time. But I would say this is the essential time for sure. Because, I mean, as you know, you've been talking about this, like so much uncertainty in the world. But when there is disruption, it's interesting. When there is disruption, it's like, you know, there's opportunity, there's hardship, progress, you know, forward motion. Setbacks, all these kind of things are happening. So I think more and more people are understanding that their security isn't going to come from a corporation or from the government or from really anybody other than themselves. But within ourselves is the ability to create this new source of income, which ultimately provides more security, allows people to do more of what's important to them. So I think this is a great time.
Perfect. And it begets the question, if we've been laid off, if we've just filed for unemployment, is it still a side hustle?
Yeah, well, good question. I guess, I don't know. I guess it could be or it could not be. I think I don't get hung up on the semantics. You know, it's like just go and start a project, do whatever you can, whatever your situation in life is, and don't worry about having all the answers, right? Don't worry about like, oh, it's going to become this startup. Oh, I'm going to have these employees. Like, I think people get hung up on that stuff a lot, and the best thing is what can you do that's in front of you right now.
Thank you. And that is so important because it's a time where I think we feel, in a sense, more helpless than ever, particularly if we just feel the energy of the field around us. And what you're saying is step forward, just step forward. It doesn't have to be the perfect step, the answer, the be all end all, just step forward.
Absolutely. I think people often are like looking for the life. They apply this big philosophical lens to what is kind of a pretty practical question. And the question is like, what should you do right now? And you don't have to know, like, this is going to be the business that I operate for the next 20 years or even the next year or whatever. You're not making this, lifelong commitment. This is not your partnership or whatever. This is something you're going to try for a while. And it's much better to try something for a while, whether it's a month or 3 months or however long, than to just kind of remain paralyzed with all these different ideas and like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Because then a month goes by, 3 months go by, whatever it is, and you haven't actually made progress. Whereas if you try something and it doesn't work out, the worst case scenario is it doesn't work out. You haven't spent a lot of money. You have learned something that you're going to apply to the next round.
Thank you. And you just said something really, really key. You haven't spent a lot of money, which begets the question, particularly now, do you need money to start a side hustle?
There are all kinds of side hustles and businesses. So it really depends on what you want to start. And, if you want to open a manufacturing facility, if you're trying to create, the next iPhone or something, then you probably need capital. But my concern is people watch, Shark Tank or shows like this, which are very entertaining and interesting. But they think that's the only way to do things. Like the only way to do things is to have somebody come and bestow, permission in the form of a check, to use that you can go and pursue your idea. When the reality is there are all kinds of projects, so many others, in which you don't need a lot of money. You don't need any money in some cases. Like I wrote this book, The $100 Startup you mentioned. Ever since then, I've been getting emails from people that are like, I broke your record. Like I have a $35 startup. I have a $0 startup. You need a negative startup somehow. So my sense is like, if you are a born entrepreneur, you know what you're supposed to do. You have this vision, then great, go do that. Okay. But for all the rest of us, which is probably the majority of people, if there are lots of different ideas and some of them don't involve a lot of risk, some of them don't require money, can be started quickly, why wouldn't you choose one of those ideas? Like, why wouldn't you do that? Especially in this day and age, as you said, when people are trying to make some quick decisions because they're feeling that pressure.
When we started this business, I guess the main expense that we had, and my wife and I had been knocked on our butts, completely wiped out. We had a car in the driveway. We couldn't afford to register it, to put it on the road. We're living in my wife's childhood bedroom, 8 by 10 room, 2 separate twin mattresses, because she has a good Chinese traditional dad. Even though we're married, we're on separate mattresses in
That's
her
great.
bedroom. I spent, I think, $55 on this Costco desk right here. And
Nice.
other than them putting food on the table for us, that's how we started. And it actually made us stronger because we had to make better business decisions. So on that note, what is the third way?
Oh, I love you said that, by the way. I think, you should keep that desk forever, right? Like even if you ever upgrade the desk, like
Yes.
you need to have the desk like in the corner, just like to remind you, it's like the first dollar, at the pizza parlor, like this is my first sale, like it's this memento kind of thing. I really believe, and I'll come to the third way in a second, but I think actually not having money or choosing to not spend money is a benefit. Rather than a hindrance, for so many projects. And the same is true with time. Actually, I hear from a lot of people that I'm so busy, where do I find the time? Well, when you're really busy, you have to use your limited free time well. Sometimes, to be like the person who has 40 hours a week to spend on a project is not good, because you're going to waste a lot of time with that.
Well, constraints are a very good thing. I'm convinced of this. And truth be told, we had a $350,000 book deal, I don't know, 5-6 years before that, and had burned through all that capital on other projects and just kept putting money in and time until we were leveled and had to go a different way. And this was so much more profitable not having money to start.
Right. Because you don't have money to waste, essentially. So you asked about the third way. So, in the book, I'm trying to take this character on a journey. He's a guy who is having struggles like so many people. He has a good job, but he also has a lot of student loan debt, like so many people out there. And this debt is affecting, all of his life, his relationship, his position at work. He's losing his apartment, all kinds of stuff, the pressures of life. And so he ends up going to this group called the Third Way Group. It's called this because, historically, if you went to start a business, if you opened up a dry cleaner or a retail shop, that's like the old school way of starting a business. And to do that, you write an extensive business plan. The business plan may or not be followed, but you have to have this document to take to the bank, to get some money and all this, like long process, long wait to see if it's going to work, high failure rate. If it works, that's great, of course. But a lot of those businesses don't work, right? Yeah. Second way is, again, that Shark Tank model that people are familiar with from popular culture, the startup, Silicon Valley model. And, nice work if you get it. People who are into that thing, that's cool. But, the third way is what you were probably how you started your business is what it sounds like. It's by looking within yourself and saying, what are the skills that I have that are valuable to other people?
Yes.
What can I, offer the world in the form of a product or a service? How can I get that out there really quickly? Even if it's not perfect, like how can I get my first version out there, without spending money, without going into debt at all, without trying to learn a new skill. Like I think it's important to learn new skills in life, but I'm not talking about like getting an MBA or something. Learning some really basic business skills to apply to the more relevant and impactful skills, which are the ones you already have. Like you have your life experience, you have whatever education you had whatever jobs you've had, your hobbies, your passion, all that kind of stuff. That's more interesting and valuable than anything you could learn now.
Well, I'm glad you said hobbies and passion, because when we were going on our crash and burn journey and burning through the capital beforehand, one of the things we did is we started a mindful running program, mindfulrunning.org. And we're recording all of these, we're recording videos, but we also did some interviews, which are supposed to be for marketing. And it was supposed to be a 3 or 4 interviews. It turned out to be 44 before my wife is going, dear God, stop. I have to edit all of these things. Please name all this. Holy stop. Right. But what I found was something I was interested in that was exciting to me. And when I matched that with a need, when I found hobby, enjoyment with need, that's when we took off.
Yeah. And I think also you were good at it. I think that's important to say, because there are lots of things that we can enjoy that are just for us. And that's all right. Like you don't have to combine your passion with running, into a side hustle. It's okay to just run or whatever you're into. But if you want to, then it is so important to have that overlap that you mentioned. It has to be something that you are excited about because life is short. There's all kinds of things you can do. Why wouldn't you want to do something that you're passionate about? But at the same time, it has to be something that meets with that need that you just mentioned. And you have to be qualified to do it. But I think all of us, if we spend some time, like just some basic exercises, we can find those little intersections. Yeah. Like they might be in a surprising place, it might be an obvious place, but it's not that hard to find it. I mean, I think the hard part is the execution, the implementation. Like, okay, how do I go from where I am now to where I want to be? But if you get a few things right in the beginning, then you can make a lot of mistakes later, I think.
Very good. So on that note, I might as well ask, people are at home, kind of a captive audience. We're kind of locked in our homes right now. Is there an easy exercise to find that nexus, to find that intersection?
Sure. I mean, well, I would just start with, let's make a list of your skills. Let's start with skills rather than passions. Mm-hmm. So make a list of because there is a correlation usually, like what you tend to be good at, you're also passionate about, but let's start on the skill side. So that's like, again, the training that you've had, the education that you've had, experience, but also like, what do your friends ask you about? What is that number one topic that they are coming to you? Hey, I'm having this problem with X or whatever. If you're playing some kind of trivia game, all about this esoteric topic, perhaps that may not be esoteric, but whatever it is, like those are skills. Let's identify that. If you are in a work environment, whether virtually or in person, ask your colleagues, what am I good at? Pay attention if you're in meetings and like people are like divvying up tasks. So, oh, Michael, you should do this. Let's give this task to Michael because he's always good at this follow through. Yeah. Whatever, that's a skill. All right. So first thing is like this skill inventory, and I think everything kind of proceeds from there. If you already have an idea, that's great. Let's include your idea and such. But from that list of skills, lots of different expressions can come. Lots of different products, services, coaching businesses, consulting opportunities. You can create some kind of media platform like you and I both have, like anybody can have access to these days, without gatekeepers. Lots of different expressions, but I think it starts with that question of skills.
Excellent, excellent. And is there a danger, I'm kind of leading the witness here, is there a danger on focusing on an idea just for the money?
Yes, I think in the long term, there is a danger to that. For all the reasons that we just said, like you want to do something that's important to you, that's meaningful and so on. I think though, in a time in which people are kind of, panicked and desperate or just feeling afraid, maybe not desperate and panicked, but they're just feeling a little bit afraid. If they have never made money for themselves before, then I assure you, it's actually quite motivating. I mean, this too, it's motivating to all of a sudden make $50 or $100 by buying and selling something or doing something that maybe you're not super passionate about, but it's going to bring you an option to do something different. So I guess just my own story, when I, was 19 years old, I got fired from the last job I ever had at FedEx. And I started buying and selling things on eBay. This is 21 years ago. And it's not like I was passionate. It's not like I loved, buying and selling, home appliances or, well, I was passionate about video games, but others, like whatever I could buy and sell, I would resell. Yeah. But I liked the process of it. It was interesting. And I was learning something I hadn't done before. And so I guess I was kind of motivated by money, but the ultimate motivation, like the ultimate underlier there was freedom, essentially. So I think there's nothing wrong with saying like, I am in a stressful situation. I need to get out of it. What can I do, to address that now? As long as you also understand, okay, maybe this is a stepping stone to something else that comes later.
I love it. I love it. And truth be told, how I got through grad school, I couldn't do much coaching at that time. I was tutoring as much as I could, but I had two things. First off, I was a former bicycle racer. And so I would go to the local velo swaps. I would pick up stuff that I knew were a good deal. You call it retail arbitrage. I would throw it on eBay. And then the professors would put out books in the hall. I learned more from this than I did by getting my MBA. They would put out free books, demo books that they had been given to review. And I would scoop them up and then I would sell them online. And that got me through grad school. Same idea.
Right. Great. So that wasn't your life mission necessarily, but it really helped you a lot, right? Like it helped you during that time.
Yes, absolutely. So there's another one that comes along with this, which is there are a lot of people who get frozen that particularly because of their parents, I would say, or well-meaning individuals, that I need to come up with $1 million idea before I can step forward.
Yeah. I've never had $1 million idea. I don't think. I mean, I've started a lot of projects over the years. I mean, some of them have gone on to do well, but I've never had, this is my $1 million idea or whatever. Again, I think maybe this is a product of parents, as you say, but also just popular culture and like idolizing people like Steve Jobs. And it's not a critique of Steve Jobs at all. It's just like these people become mythical figures, and therefore we are supposed to, somehow be like them. When the reality is, we're probably going to be a much better, Michael Sandler, Chris Guillebeau than we are Elon Musk or whoever. So what is, what's our idea? What's our $1,000 idea? What's the idea what do you need to do right now? Are you trying to like create this new source of income, to pay off the bills or to like, make yourself feel more secure? What do you need to do to accomplish that, in the next week, 2 weeks? What's the step for that? You can't always see like the end step, but if you see that step in front of you and you start taking, maybe it will be $1 million idea eventually. Maybe it won't. But I think you won't find out if you just keep, as you say, remaining paralyzed by indecision.
Thank you. And if we're stuck in, well, actually, let's flip to the other side of being paralyzed by indecision. What do we do if we have too many possibilities? I could do this. I could do that. I'm excited about all of these.
Yep. So I think in the long run, this is a much greater challenge for people because some people are like, I don't have any ideas. That's usually an easy problem to solve. Yeah. There's lots of questions we could have with people. You can get the ideas. Ideas are everywhere. I feel like ideas are not the value. So a lot of people have this problem that you just mentioned. I've got too many ideas. So let's see, what are a couple of things we can do with this? I've got this tool, decision making analysis. I can give it. It's a free PDF where people. The short version is you're just kind of making a list of here's my 4 ideas, my 5 ideas, and then I'm going to rank these ideas based on a few criteria. The criteria are things like feasibility, like how easy is it, to do this idea? Do I see a path from where I am now to 30 days from now having this idea out? If I'm trying to like make a new computer, maybe not. If I'm trying to like launch this, instant consulting business, probably so. So you got feasibility, profitability or profit potential, urgency or timeliness. How timely is this idea right now? Excuse me. And then you're on motivation. Like how excited are you about this idea? So you kind of look at this analysis and you're like, okay, is there something that emerges from this? If nothing else, I'm going to eliminate a couple ideas. But hopefully maybe I'll actually see this is the idea that's the most feasible, has the most profit potential, and I'm the most excited about it. If you see that, then that's your answer right now.
Thank you. So while we want to move expeditiously if there is no income coming in, and we're talking about just stepping forward, I have Henry the Tortoise. He is my mascot on the desk right now. He blends into the green screen, reminding me that anything you can do quickly, you can do twice as well by going half as fast.
Yep, fair.
So stepping forward expeditiously but slowly, does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah. Yep. I'm just thinking it through. I think it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I think maybe I'm actually not so good at I need to apply this advice, to myself sometimes because I tend to be like, let's move forward right now. Let's go, But perhaps the answer is what is the season in life you are in? What is the season in life you're in? What is the need that you have? Okay, so your need of, like when I also mentioned those criteria, maybe it could also be like, what is your goal here? Like, what are we trying to do? So somebody who is in that place of insecurity, bordering on desperation, or like, I really need to do something, their plan and their course of action might be different from somebody who's like, actually, I am okay right now. I have a good job, but I realize I need to make some different decisions for the future in case that job ever changes. I do want to establish this, security for myself and such. So they might not necessarily need to make money in 2 weeks or whatever. They want to think about what's this project I am going to build for the long. So their path is going to be different. So it depends on what season you're in life.
And I guess since we're all in a very interesting season, as you put it that way right now, it may be that I need to make money now. And as long as there's not the outlay of capital or risk by jumping too fast, you might as well plunge with both feet.
Yeah. I mean, what could go wrong? It's always good to ask, what's the worst that can happen? I think if people ask that question about a lot of things in life, then they're going to make braver, bolder choices because they understand that the answer is like the worst thing that can happen is probably not that bad. The worst thing that can happen if I try to do one of these things, again, as I said, it's like it doesn't work out. Okay, it doesn't work out. Well, I haven't lost my life savings. I had some time anyway. Could have spent that time watching Netflix, but instead I learned something. And now my next round is going to be better. So what's the worst that can happen? I mean, why not, as I said?
Woohoo! And on that note, you have a principle that you bring about again and again and again through this book. And you sandwich, I think, the whole book with this principle. You can do more than you think.
I mean, I think this is reflective of your philosophy as well. From what I know, it's like you're about expanding people's horizons, helping them think differently. I feel like, so for me, for 10 years now, I've been running this project, The Art of Nonconformity, in various iterations. It was originally a blog. Now it's a few different things. Yeah. And my overall philosophy, for that is you don't have to live your life the way others expect. And I think throughout life, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, et cetera, you're always going to encounter people who have various ideas and assumptions about what you should do. Yeah. And it's not that every person is like a malicious actor necessarily. They're not like a villain figure. They just have their own ideas. They have their own priorities. They're more concerned about themselves than they are about you, because that's how we all are, essentially. So a lot of what I hope to do is just kind of same thing as you, expand the horizon, show people that there are more opportunities than they may have realized. There are alternatives, there is another way. You've been told that there is the way to do this, whatever this is. And that's fine, but there's also another way. Not necessarily a better way, but you need to understand that there are more paths than what is being presented to you. So if you're in this time, especially we're all in this time of change, disruption, uncertainty, you need to understand that there is more than one path forward. And you need to find the path that works for you.
This is fascinating. I'm drawing a whole bunch of things together, Chris, because I went through my MBA. I got 2 masters at the same time, MBA in computers. I had this brilliant idea to go work in e-commerce, and I got my degrees 2000, 2001, right as the dot-com bubble burst, and there were no jobs. It went from the job board of huge signing bonuses to reduced layoffs. Nothing. That's where we're at in a sense right now, where we have to reinvent ourselves. So I think this could be a very, very positive constraint.
Absolutely. Here's a question for you.
Yes.
Aren't you glad that you graduated during that time? You know what I mean? Because what if you had graduated a little bit earlier and you got that signing bonus and you went down that track because that's what you thought you wanted to do, right? Would you be doing what you're doing now? And maybe you would, we don't know. But I just think about it for my own life, because I also I did a master's degree, and then I applied to do a PhD and was rejected from every major program that I wanted to go to.
I got rejected as well.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so glad. I am so glad. Listen, I mean, there is no part of me that wishes for that alternative history. Sometimes in life we're like, oh, what would have happened if I went that? I'm like, no, I'm so glad that I didn't. So if we bring it forward, your situation, then graduating in the dot-com bust, and me being rejected from my schools before I started the Art of Nonconformity, here we are now. People had a certain expectation that it was going to go one way, my job is going to be secure or whatever. I'm not going to be locked down in my home for weeks on end, whatever that situation. I didn't expect this, okay? But maybe years from now, I'll look back and say, it's good that it happened when it did, because, it connected me with this person or this idea, or it allowed me to make progress on this project, or again, I had this brave choice that I had been thinking about for a long time, but I held back for whatever reason. And when this happened, I was like, okay, if not now, when?
What was the push over the edge? Was there a particular moment, if you go, I give up, traditional path, ain't working, it's broke, I'm going for it?
I think for me, I was fortunate because I never really had a traditional path. In the sense of I was a high school dropout, years before going to grad school, and never really had a job aside from those, teenager kind of jobs. So that helped. I never really had a vision to do the traditional thing. I mean, ironically, people think of entrepreneurship as risky. This is another thing that's in the popular culture. Big risk. You might have a big reward. You're going to take a big risk. If I think about somebody like me, entrepreneurship is the safe choice. It's the conservative choice, actually. For me, it would be very risky to try to compete in the job market. What would I do? Yeah. I wouldn't survive, in that. So I never had that to really, kind of compare to.
It sounds like, and I've got mom going. I'm chuckling internally because I got mom in my head, and mom is stable, doctor, lawyer. It's got to be one of these things. So when I became a professional coach, her song was "Get a job, do 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 do, get a job," and that voice would stay in my head as I'm going down the entrepreneur road. No matter what enough, I cannot be enough and do enough because I'm not going the traditional path. Until I started to examine that and peel it away. How do you help people when they are stuck with what Don Miguel Ruiz calls a government of our mind that is telling us what you're doing is not right?
That's a good phrase. I think highlighting stories and just showing people that there are alternatives, not telling them what to do or what to think, but just saying like, hey, you can think for yourself. And look, here's an example of somebody else who did. And I think in a lot of ways, the most powerful examples are those around us. Yeah. It's not necessarily someone who is an authority figure, an author, podcaster or whatever. I think it's like when you know somebody, in your circle that has faced those same pressures and, didn't have any advantages that you didn't have or whatever, but they have been able to peel life back, as you said, and, find a different path. Then all of a sudden they gain that courage. So to anybody watching or listening, maybe they need to be that person. Like, if you're watching and listening, like you need to be that person for someone else, because they're not going to read somebody's book or whatever. But if you all of a sudden, start examining your life and making different choices according to what's important to you, then they'll look and say, I never thought that I could do, I never even realized there was an alternative, but look at this person. Maybe that's going to, create a very powerful, circular effect.
People won't know this or why this needs to be made into a bumper sticker until they read your book, but we get to be the Lawrence.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Let's go through, if we can, the Third Way Manifesto. You have 5 points. I don't expect you to have them memorized, so I'll walk you through them. But
that's great. I'm glad you did.
Not a problem. Point 1 and 2 we covered a little bit, but we'll go there anyway. Number 1, everybody's an expert at something.
Yep. So we were talking about that in terms of skills. I think people sometimes are like, I don't have skills, or they don't say I don't have skills, but they say I only have skills that apply, in my career. I was trained in this particular form of engineering. So, therefore that's what I do. I don't have anything else, or I am a teacher. That's what, so everyone is an expert at something, whether it is like, the random esoteric topic that we talked about, or it's a question of, okay, you're an engineer, so therefore you have logical, analytical skills. You're good at certain kind of thinking, deciphering. You're good at reverse engineering a process. What can we do with that? So I really do believe that everybody has something that is valuable that can be converted in some way, and then exchanged for money. So that's a lot of what I try to do is like, let's go from that idea process to the product or the service.
I like it. And there's an idea that's coming to me here because you were talking about, well, if people start coming to you, Michael, at work and they say, can you help me with this? Because you're good at it. That's a clue. And another clue is that goes in that same vein. If it seems so, oftentimes what we're best at seems so easy that we don't think it's a skill or a valuable skill.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. The thing is, what's easy to you is hard for someone else. I think that's really important to realize. Like, and I think about my own things I'm not good at. Like I'm actually terrible at anything mechanical. I can't put together like furniture, like IKEA furniture. I just can't do it. And I accept it. I learned to just accept this. Actually, yes. I was like, I'm not going to try to improve my skills. Every time I've tried, it hasn't gone well. So I'm like, my contribution to the world is not going to be putting together IKEA furniture. For so many people out there, like, it's the easiest thing ever. So what's easy to you is not easy to someone else. And I'm glad you brought that up. It's a very good point.
And going along the IKEA furniture, riffing off of that, we don't want to put a square peg in a round hole. If you're not good at it, that's not what you need to make yourself do to prove that you're a good person to yourself.
Yeah,
go to what you do shine at.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is not to be mediocre at everything, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty, disappointing life, but sadly, I think it's kind of what a lot of people are encouraged to do. It is like, oh, you don't know how to do that? Why don't you know? That's so simple. Why don't you know how to do that? So therefore, you're going to go frustrate yourself, hoping to get to, the 50th percentile or whatever, when in the meantime, where you shine, is this whole other area where you could be maxing out and like changing the world in this field or topic or whatever it is. I think that's, as you said, where to put your emphasis.
Awesome. Number 2, go from idea to product or service.
Oh, yeah. So again, just kind of led into it there. Everybody's got an idea. If you talk to the person on the street, do you have a business? Oh, I got this business idea. But we as consumers, like think about it from the perspective of being a consumer, we don't buy ideas. Nobody goes to the idea store. We don't shop online for ideas. We shop, we buy products, we buy services. So when you start thinking about your idea, I've got this skill. I am an expert in this thing. What is my idea? I like to help people really quickly think, what is my actual offer? What is it that I am putting out there to say, okay, I have this particular thing that you can purchase, and here's the benefit, here's why it's going to change your life, and here's how much it costs. And here's where you click here to buy, or whatever the call to action is. So just kind of getting really tangible really quickly. And if you, as you're thinking through these different ideas, if you don't immediately see a revenue model, if you don't see how this project's going to make money, I think it's a mistake to skip over that. And I often hear from people that are like, I have made
this mistake.
Yeah, right. People are like, I'll figure that out later. It's a really interesting idea. I don't know how it's going to make money, but that will come later. Again, I think it's a mistake usually because there are so many different things you can do. Why not choose something, again, if you're trying to have a money-making project, where it's clear from the front end how it's actually going to bring in revenue.
And this means that this is, to me, a really exciting time. So I give people a homework exercise right now, which I call a dream journal, which at the end of the day, I want them to dream of the most amazing future, which plants it into the subconscious. And I say, I want you to be as unrealistic as possible. We don't know what this world is going to look like coming out of it. So dream, what could be wanted? What could be possible? Anything. And let's envision ahead what this, I call it post-CV world, might look like.
Yes, I like that. I think people are trapped, right? People feel trapped. It's interesting because people are literally trapped in some ways. We're like locked down, we can't go out, right? We want to protect other people. But the greater trap is that mental trap of being so limited, right? Of like, okay, the best thing that comes out of this situation is one day I'll be able to go back to work. The best thing that comes out is I won't get the virus, or if I get it, I won't be that sick, and then I'll be able to go back to the job I was doing before. Or if I've been laid off, I'll be able to get hired again, in that position. And it could be so much more, as you said. So I'm glad you're encouraging people to dream. I think a lot of what I try to do is like encourage the dream and then make it practical, like both. I don't want to limit the dreaming. I don't want them to just do something that's practical. Like it has to be both.
Woohoo! On that note, since we'll go practical here again. Yeah. Number 3, spend as little money as possible.
It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like why spend money if you don't have to? If you need to have a website, okay, maybe $10 for a domain name. You can get free themes and such. If you need to pay someone for help, then that's fine, right? But the whole point is like, why spend money if you don't have to? I think it's a badge of honor to not. I think it's a badge of honor to be like, I started this business, as you said, with my, Costco table or whatever. I think that's really cool. Somebody asked me the other day, I think on Twitter or something, they're like, I have $5,000 to start a business. Is that enough? And I was like, what an interesting question. I have X amount of money, is it enough? Rather than saying like, what is it that I'm actually trying to do or to accomplish? And so my response was like, it's actually too much, perhaps, like it might be too much money.
And it's really cool because we're afraid to do it ourselves. We're afraid of our own strength. We're afraid of our independence. We're afraid of our own power. And so we put these limiting blocks and beliefs in front of us. And one of those beliefs is, I can't start a business until. Well, now if you're listening to this, today is your until.
That's right. We do that with lots of things in life, right? Like I can't, there's a trip that I want to take. Well, now I actually can't take the trip. Maybe that's the wrong analogy. There's something else I want to do, in life, this thing that I've always wanted to pursue, or is somebody I've always wanted to connect with, or whatever my bucket list thing is. Like I can't do it until. And I think it can be kind of scary to like kind of strip those restrictions away and say, actually, if you want to, you can do it right now, because you're like, oh, I wasn't prepared for that. Like it's actually comforting in some ways to feel like I can't do it. Yeah. It's comforting to feel like this is inaccessible to me. But I think it's just like a momentary discomfort when you realize like, okay, I actually can do it. Because then on the other side of that discomfort is, okay, this is actually pretty awesome. This is actually really good. I was afraid to do it. The only constraint was my fear. And by just acknowledging that, not pretending it doesn't exist, but acknowledging it and just, pushing through, then I came to this alternate reality, which like it was waiting for me all this time, but I didn't see it until now.
Woohoo! And once you see it, this is probably my all-time favorite, and it scares the hell out of my wife, but she goes along with me. She is a trooper. Launch before you're ready.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to be ready. First of all, I mean, like, I think, when are you ready to do anything in life? Whether it's talking on a live stream or launching your project, or putting anything out in the world, sending any kind of message that is scary to you, whether it's a sales message or, hey everyone, I got my project. You're never going to be ready. So I think just acknowledging that as well, maybe giving yourself like an artificial deadline. Some people find it helpful to like do this forced accountability thing where every day on Facebook or wherever they connect, they're posting, guess what, everybody, in 10 days I'm starting this project. In 9 days I'm starting this project. In 5, and then it's like you're not ready, but you've told everybody this. You have that external accountability. Some people don't respond to external accountability well, so in that case, it's like, what can you do, for your own internal accountability? How can you commit to yourself that I'm going to make this happen? But you're never going to be ready, so you might as well move forward. And the information you acquire from moving forward is actually going to help make the thing much better, that you wouldn't be able to get that information any other way.
There's a value in starting a podcast, and particularly when we started, we were a full-on daily show, and 7 days a week. And what we learned is the old adage: editing is never completed, just abandoned. You have to move on.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
You grow such skills and confidence when you just put it out there and revise, and put it out there and revise. In fact, number 5, improve as you go.
Yeah, it will get better as it goes, but it won't get better if you just remain in paralysis. I mean, I wouldn't have written, 7 books if I was a perfectionist. I mean, there are things in every one of my books. I'm like, I wish I could go back and change that, but overall, I'm proud of it. I know it's fundamentally good. It can help people, so I got to move on to the next thing. And hopefully, everything I do will get better. This is book number 7. Hopefully, it's better than some of the earlier ones. I also do the daily podcast. I'm on episode, I think, 1200 now, and hopefully, episode 1200 is better than episode 12. But I wouldn't have been able to make it better if I had just said, I'm going to make 1,000 episodes without ever putting one of them out to the world. And then when I'm ready 3 years from now, I will put that out, which it will no longer be relevant at that time. And everything else will have moved on, et cetera.
I have to acknowledge something here, because we're in episode 1300 or something. You're catching us.
Nice. Awesome.
You are a podcast king or god to make it to the point. The amount of intestinal fortitude.
But I'm behind you, Chris, so props, respect, man.
No, but bowing down here, man. What you're doing is freaking huge.
Well, same, man. It's cool. Yeah, it's such a great conversation. Such a great community you have. So positive and so motivational to me. Like, I'm going to go away from this conversation and be like, how can I be more like Michael?
It's going to go both ways, Chris.
True story.
Oh, man, thank you. You have an exercise in your book, and I think it's a really powerful one. We may have to move the decimal point a little bit here. But it's an exercise that Jake was charged with by Lawrence, and I'm wondering if you can help guide us through this a little bit, making $1,000 out of thin air.
So Jake is the guy, the protagonist of the story, who has these struggles, the financial struggles, which affect the rest of his life. Starts going to the third way group. And that mentor figure says, hey, Jake, at the end of the meeting, one of the first meetings, got an assignment for you. Basically, your assignment, since you're learning how all this stuff works, is before the next meeting, before next week, I want you to make $1,000. So at first, Jake is like, well, this is not very helpful, because like, if I knew how to make $1,000, I probably wouldn't, be in a situation to begin with. So they talk it out a little bit, and the mentor doesn't say exactly what to do, but says, hey, have you thought about selling something on an online auction? Yeah. And Jake thinks, that's kind of basic, is that really the best advice I'm going to get? And the mentor says, well, have you tried it? And he starts thinking about it, and he's like, well, I sold a college textbook, at one point, and I think I have some more textbooks at home. I guess I could sell those textbooks. And he's like, all right, I'll do that. But then what do I do, after I run out of textbooks, which is very similar to my situation 20 years ago. Like, I started selling stuff around my house. I was like, this is awesome. But then I ran out of stuff, from around my house. And so what Jake eventually does is he learns to look up the completed listings for the same kind of textbooks he's already selling. And he realizes he can buy them at one price and resell them at another. And again, this is a basic skill. But anybody can do this thing still. 20 years ago, I was doing it. Now Jake in the book is doing it. Real people are out there doing it, buying and selling. This doesn't have to be the only thing, of course, but it's just an example. And so he is able to kind of learn about this retail arbitrage thing. And he eventually starts going to yard sales and such, buying stuff and selling it, and makes the $1,000. But more important than making the $1,000 is the boost in confidence that it gives him. And it shows him like, if I could do this in a week, what else could I do? And I could do this with limited knowledge. Now that I have even more knowledge, what comes next? So again, I think that's why it's important. I hear what you're saying about moving the decimal point. Like I know people need more than $1,000.
Or the other direction. I think there are people who are right now have lost everything in a sense, and starting with how can I pull even $100 out of thin air?
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking like, of course, people want 10,000 and more, but that feels inaccessible sometimes. So yeah, I'm glad you actually make it. The point is a small amount of money, a relatively small but significant amount of money. Whatever it is that you're like, oh, okay, I can't live off of that, but that's actually some real money. If I had more like that, then that would be good. That's kind of boost is what allows people to look for the next thing.
Very cool. And I'm thinking on a retail arbitrage, I'm thinking what are going to be people going to need locally after this as one opportunity? Because I'm watching on eBay, and because people are losing jobs, their toys, they're going to throw up for sale. So I'm in a cyclist and a skater. Their bicycles, they're going to throw online because they don't have the time or money or resources. I guess not necessarily time, but they're not going to be racing, for instance, this year. So the market's going to go flat. If you could take and buy those bicycles and had a place to resell them where they're needed, and you do figure out supply and demand, that's retail arbitrage. If we can do that on more of a level that's helping people than maybe necessarily bicycles, though I'm a bike geek, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
You can figure that out, what people are going to need now. You've got a business.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example because, biking, obviously, like a passionate user base. It costs a fair amount of money. Like the more you get into it, the more you can spend, all kinds of stuff that you can buy. And as you said, very good observation about like at this time, people are going to be selling a bunch of stuff. So I think you can apply that same thinking to even going beyond like reselling and saying, okay, what at this time in history, during this weird, interesting season, great adjective, by the way, what are the needs? Like who are the winners and losers? Because just like progress always has like winners and losers, like the car industry, like kind of put the horse and buggy industry, out of business. Like progress always has winners and losers. Disruption or negative change also has positive effects. So what are the positive effects? What are people looking for? I think one of those things is just connection and community.
Mike Stempel, he's a serial entrepreneur. He generates 10 to 20 companies a year, throws out 19 of them, works and builds one. If you've ever driven through Colorado and you drove through Denver and you see the murals of the Denver Nuggets or of John Elway painted on the side of a building, those were his paintings as well. Right. He was our mentor, and he taught us something that goes in line with your grandparent test here. He said, watch what you do. It can't just be about the money. For instance, he gave us the example. I can't believe I'm going to use it here. He said, wet T-shirt in a bottle. Forgive me, everybody. He said, yes, you could make $1 million doing it. Right. But in your world, Chris, it would not pass the grandparent test.
Yeah. So the grandparent test, that's a wonderful example of something that, as you said, could make money. But the grandparent test is twofold. You're trying to consider different ideas. You're like, first of all, can you explain this idea to your grandparents? It's not meant to imply that grandparents can understand technological things or something. But if you think about somebody who not familiar with this topic or field, whatever it is, can you explain it? And if your answer is like it's complicated, then you need to work more on that idea, because every idea can be reduced to a simple explanation. And the second part of it is, okay, if you can explain it, would you want to? Like, would you be willing to? And would you be willing to tell your grandma or your grandpa? Maybe your grandpa, I don't know, but your grandparent in general, that you've started this business about wet T-shirts, in a bottle. Most of us, at least for me, if I think about my grandparents, I'm like, no, I wouldn't want to have that conversation, actually. So I'm not really contributing anything that's really meaningful to the world with that. And maybe if you're really young or if it's your first project, then you do something, like that. But then you realize, okay, what is my contribution? Like, what am I actually trying to do to help people out there?
How important is it that we look for something? I've been rereading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, how he got through Auschwitz and how meaning was the answer. How important is that now?
I think that is also essential. I mean, ultimately, even though we're talking about very practical things, like I make no apology for like trying to help people make money. But ultimately, I'm the first to say that everything connects to purpose, and you do these things to create freedom for your life so that you can have more of the life you want. You have fewer of the bad constraints. You have self-imposed constraints are helpful, that you have fewer of those bad constraints like debt or, fear, loss of income and such. But ultimately, like, on our hierarchy of needs, we're all seeking to contribute. We're all seeking to do something that matters. And, I think probably everybody watching or listening, I would suggest is relatively privileged, at least, so like relatively in terms of this, scope of the world and such. So what are we going to do with that? We have access to technology. We can connect with people everywhere. E-commerce is mainstream. Like my grandma, speaking of her, before she passed away, she had a PayPal account. And I was like, never would have saw that coming 20 years ago. Yeah, exactly. So many opportunities. What are we going to do with this time? Like Mary Oliver quote, right? Like, what are you going to do with this wild and precious life? We're in a pretty interesting time, but it comes with so many opportunities. What are you going to do with it?
Woohoo! For those not familiar with the term, what is passive income and why is it such a pot of gold?
Pot of gold, yeah. It's one of these things that people talk about, but it's like have different concepts of or whatever. And I think passive income is essentially a source of income that you don't have to actively do a lot for. Doesn't mean you never do anything for it, but you have created some kind of asset that can earn money for you. It's really a fun thing. I mean, it's probably more than fun, but that's just the first word I think of. Like to wake up in the morning and like you have a PayPal notification, speaking of, or Venmo or whatever, that came in overnight, and you're like, I was sleeping and somebody sent me money. A stranger on the internet sent me money while I was sleeping. Maybe I have to do something for it, or maybe I don't now. But the point is, like, I earned that without actually doing something. So I'm trying to help people, get to that point of passive income, which is not talk a lot about in the book. It's not just about buying rental properties, which is what people think about. Passive income, buy a bunch of rental properties. Nice work if you get it, but there's so many other things you can do that don't require that kind of complexity and capital.
And I've been thinking about rental properties right now. And certainly if you have some bucks, it's good to be buying them. They're going to be on sale. Wait a little while. They're really going to be on sale. Yeah. However, if you have rental properties right now, rents might go down and it actually could be a really challenging time to keep yourself above water.
Yep. Good point. I saw, interestingly, that Airbnb is kind of a loser in this, speaking of winners and losers, because or not Airbnb, but a lot of people who have purchased Airbnbs in desirable areas, perhaps, your area, because now a lot of those units are converting to rental properties, which are obviously going to bring in a lot less, income each month for the owners. So, this world of change, like things go up, things go down, how can you diversify? How can you ask yourself, like, what's next? What's the next thing I should do?
Well, that kind of gets to kind of a motivational thing right now. But if you look beyond the immediate suffering, and I'm not going to make light of it at all, but this is a reshuffling of the deck where really, to me, anything is possible. If you're listening to this, if you have a breath left, then anything is possible. You can completely reinvent your life here.
That's right. You can, and why wouldn't you? My market, I always say, is like dissatisfied people, and dissatisfied doesn't mean that you're miserable. Dissatisfied doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. Dissatisfied just means you want more than you have in life. Like that there's something more, like you have whether you think of it as a calling or just something that you create yourself, however you think of it, you're like, I want to strive for something more, as you said, anything is possible. This is the time.
So you call it working with dissatisfied people. I say that I'm an alchemist. I play with energy, and that dissatisfaction is holding a giant bowl of energy that is fuel. So whereas we see fear around us, I see fuel and potential. Once we give that, I've got 10 lights in here. They're all diffuse, helping me have no shadow. If we took them all together, 100 watts each, I've got a directional laser beam that can cut through steel. That's what you're helping people to do now.
Woohoo! I love it.
Awesome.
I affirm you. Just love it.
A few last questions here, Chris. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm like a kid in a candy store here. Do you have one step people can take? Because this is cosmically, we'll dial it down here, a little bit of a bit of a smackdown right now. What is one step we can take to regain confidence to be able to step forward during this time?
I think like high level, it has to be something like, believe in ourselves. Like we have to believe that something is possible, right? Which is why people perhaps, are drawn to conversations like these. So we have to believe in ourselves to know that something is possible. And then we need, it's like 1, 2, right? Then we need the tangible expression of that. So maybe it's like asking yourself, what is the tangible expression of what is possible for me? And this is not metaphysical. This is not like, this is like, what is the thing I do like right now? Do I go away and make that list of my skills? Do I like dig my textbooks out of my closet and list them for sale? Is it something totally different? Whatever that idea is that I've been sitting on, what is the tangible expression, the next step that I can do right now that I believe in myself more, now that I've understood, that so much more is possible through this reshuffling of the deck, as you call it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to ask you, I don't know, it's probably before your time, but there was an old detective show called Columbo. And at the end of Columbo, the murderer is getting away with it, inevitably. And Columbo says, "Oh, just one more thing. Can I borrow that pen there?" And he pulls out the guy lends him the pen who's getting away with murder. And Columbo holds up in the pen and goes, see, you are the murderer. It's the just one more thing question. Is there just one more thing that I haven't asked you about? No pressure.
You've asked some great questions, man. I mean, this is a wonderful conversation. I don't actually have one more thing. I feel like you nailed it. Like you nailed it throughout. So you didn't save one thing for the end, because it's just been so good. But if there's anything I can do to help listeners or viewers, I'd love to hear from them. So thank you so much.
Where can people go then to find your beautiful book and to find out more?
Yeah, you're awesome, man. Moneytreebook.com or chrisguillebeau.com, which no one can ever spell. But if you type in something like that in Google, you'll come to me.
Chris, this has been phenomenal. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. What you're doing is incredibly important always. However, I think this is a society or a planet that is going to need a side hustle now and fast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Huge honor.
Thank you. Goes both ways. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the money tree and begin finding your fortune in your own backyard today and shine bright. Woohoo! All my love, my brother. All my love.
That's so good, man. You're so good at this. You're so good at this.
If you like this video, then you're a light worker, you're a light warrior, and we need your love and light. We need to crank it up to the max. That's why we're offering boot camps. You can check them out down below. Monday through Friday events, 1 hour a day, almost free, to help you crank your light up to the max, get you in the most positive place possible, boost your immune system to the max, and help you to help the world to shine bright. We're also offering YouTube live events every Saturday and Sunday during this time to help you overcome fear, overcome worry, overcome stress, and again, boost up your immune system. These tapping events, these boot camps, all involve group meditations where we come together, set group intention, help you help yourself, help your family, and help the entire world. You're a light worker. Your time is now, so come join us. Click below for these extra special events. I just had the most beautiful, informative, how to make money during this interesting time interview with Chris Guillebeau. To check out more incredible interviews on making money in your life today, click here, subscribe below, click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows and abundant YouTube lives helping you during this challenging time. And be sure to join us for the boot camp. I'm pointing down below to click on the link below and join us for our upcoming life-changing boot camps. Next one is on positivity. Love you guys so, so much. Shine bright. Woohoo! Give us a big thumbs up if you like this.